Okay, so thank you everyone once again who joined us today. So today we'll be exploring agentic AI and the future of work, and our guest speaker for today is Matthew Versaggi. Matthew is the White House Presidential Innovation Fellow in AI and a patent holding specialist in cognitive technology and quantum computing. Matthew, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for Wikistrat for reaching out to me. It's an honor to be here. I've been watching Wikistrat mature and grow since its inception many years ago, and it's a privilege to be here. So let me share my screen. Oh, and greetings from the nation's capital, the United States, Washington, D.C., which I'm sitting, and it is a privilege to show you what I have to show you. So let's get into it. I'm just going to share my screen and get ready. Let me go into presentation mode here. There we go. All right. So we're going to talk about agentic tech and the future of work here. Let's just jump right into it. So I don't need to tell you all about myself. All that kind of stuff's out there. This will be a quick intro, and then we can get to the real meat of things, which is questions and answers. But I want to give you context first, just to kind of understand how all this stuff sort of fits together. So let's jump into that. So I've been in the agent space for a while. Since doing graduate school, I've been in the AI space for about 4 decades. Been doing agents since graduate school, all the way through working at the Fortune 5 healthcare space. Even in now, we're still working with agents on many aspects, from the healthcare area I'm in to DoD, the whole bit. Agents are everywhere. So that's that. Agents are old. It's an old technology that's been around since the 1950s and maturing through many different iterations. Agents that can learn and think and improve its own behavior and things like that. Been around for a long time. So nothing new here really under the sun. I think that's the key thing. It may be new to you though, but it's not new to the AI community. Now, in setting the context for this discussion and giving you an idea of why it's important, I want to bring 2 contexts to you, 2 pieces of information that could be helpful. Number 1, this idea of VUCAD world. Number 2, AI is a general purpose technology. These matter because the VUCAD world is an acronym for a very harsh social, economic, political environment the whole world's moving into. And we'll explore that quickly. But when you combine that with AI as a general purpose technology, GPTs meaning things that have changed the power, wealth, and societal landscape every time they've appeared. And I mean things like electricity. Imagine what the world was like before electricity, or rubber, or steel, domesticated animals, things like that. These things are happening now, as well as a few others. And this is a context in which the gravity of this conversation takes hold. So let's look at VUCAD world really quickly and look at some of the things that are happening. So first of all, when you connect the globe, distances and material things become unimportant, but time dominates everything. How fast does things happen? Speed to market, speed to value, things like that. There's a whole bunch of technologies maturing in the same window. 3 of them are general purpose technologies. You got AI, biotech, and nanotech. And then you got quantum on the other end, and a whole bunch of other ones that are very disruptive in the same window. You've got compounding innovation cycles, right, that build on top of each other to getting squished. So the rates of change are happening faster and faster and faster. You have to understand that. You have this thing called foresighting. This is going to be important to us. That's replacing prediction in strategic planning, basically meaning you take a 10-year time frame, everything's fluid. You get people who are looking for very important systemic changes, like the emergence of social media on your mobile phone. They project themselves out 10 years and go on a fact-finding mission through some rigorous techniques that have been around for about 65 years. And they go looking around. They come back to the now, right here, and they don't predict the future. They invent it. That's going to become important for us when we talk about, well, how does work react to this? A number of other things here, like entry barriers are evaporating, business model, life cycles are declining, meaning the shape of the organization, how it does business is getting smaller and smaller. Workforce perturbances, like the time in which you have to reskill is being pushed back further and further, closer to the time when you actually enter the workforce. So you have these micro careers occurring earlier and earlier because of all these things. So that's the VUCAD world. And it's going to affect what we talk about. The next thing is AI is a general purpose technology. GPTs have three things in common. Number one, they're pervasive across every sector, everywhere, every organization, on every sovereign state of the planet. Always have been. Think of where you can't find electricity. Second thing is they have this evolutionary component, right? So over time, they evolve. And I've watched AI evolve over 4 decades, so I've seen it, right? It's changed over time, and the evolution's getting faster because the rates of change and compounding innovations are getting faster. And then third, you have what's called, it's an economic term, spillover innovations through complementaries. And that basically means like you have a major innovation here, and you have all these ancillary innovations over there. So you split the atom, then you got atomic power, atomic medicine, atomic bombs, those kinds of things. So AI is like that on steroids. So AI is a general purpose technology. All of these things combined together has a significant concern about strategy. And in that comes the nature of work. And by the way, for those of you paying attention to what happens in Washington, D.C., and we have to, the action plan that just came out last week talks very much about what we are exploring here. So there's the thing itself, various sections, they come out and say, hey, AI is a general purpose technology. So the federal government in the US is saying, yep, it's a GPT. And they also have this aspect that says, hey, AI is going to transform how work gets done. One of the key things that we're going to be exploring and talking about here. So keep that in mind as well. The federal government in the United States is very keenly aware of this. So let's talk about agents and why agents are different and why work changes with agents. So first of all, agents do work as opposed to what I call classical AI that does prediction and classification, a few other things, right? Agents actually do work. If you tell them to go do something, they're going to go do something. And that's an important thing. If you guys have never played video games, first-person video games like Halo, Call of Duty, you should try that because the bad guys are actually agents in there. You get a real feel for how agents work and what we're talking about. We'll talk about brain mechanics and autonomous entities as well. But agents are like humans, right? But they do work. They're digital synthetic agents that can work in many different spaces. So this is kind of what we're talking about. Halo Cortana, if you ever play that game, you should. Give you a very good idea of exactly what we're talking about when we talk about intelligent agents. Now, the agent space is important to look at because there's a lot of bites being taken out of this from things, the stuff you're mostly aware of, because most of AI is hidden, by the way, comes from this generative AI agent space. And this is what we call collective intelligence and all of that. But other chunks are being taken out. Gaming and drones, military drones take out a big chunk over here. You've got cognitive reasoning taking out a big chunk over here. You've got deep learning that takes chunks out of the warehouse space and processing automation like chemicals and materials, things like that. So all taking somewhat overlapping, but mostly non-overlapping space out. And there's all these unknown things coming to market fairly soon too. So the agent space is not just Gen AI, although that's what you're being exposed to mostly. These other ones have been around for a long time. So here's the difference between standard machine learning techniques and what we're talking about with agents. Something called cognition. And human cognition is attention, memory, problem solving, all these things down here, right? And it's a function of taking the mechanics of the human brain, discrete areas doing unique tasks that are tightly interwoven. That tightly interwovenness gives us human cognition. Over here, you got the SOAR cognitive architecture, been around for 50 years in the military and in academics and all that. Does the same things, built after the mechanics of the brain. And this gives you an insight as to how these things work, right? You've got unique areas doing specific tasks that are tightly interwoven. And now what we have instead of human cognition is computational cognition. Same aspects, attention, memory, problem solving, all that kind of stuff, but in an architecture, in a software architecture that could fit on your phone. This is very different than machine learning, completely different technology than machine learning, although you'll start to see them fuse. So again, when we talk about agents, we talk about something that can sense the world around it and then can act in that external environment. It can take action. It can do stuff, and it can do stuff on its own. It doesn't need humans to tell it specifically what to do. We kind of line up what it ought to do, and it figures it out for itself. So agents are imbued with reasoning capabilities on demand. We call it automated reasoning. It's an old book. You can get it for pennies on the dollar now. And it's got two fundamental characteristics that are missing from machine learning. One is the presence of working memory, which is a defining characteristic for anything that has to reason in this space. The second thing is reasoning cycles, the ability to reason through things very quickly, like what your desires are, what your goals are, has things changed, all that kind of stuff. These are all aspects of reasoning entities. This is why you ought to play video games, and good ones too, because the bad guys can do all of this. They're all cognitive agents out there to give you hands-on experience with those. Now, if you look at the agentic architectures that are coming out of Gen AI, and you compare them with cognitive architectures, which are 50 years old, you're beginning to see patterns reemerge, right? You've got an LLM, which is just an interface, but then you've got semantic memory and episodic memory. You've got semantic memory and episodic memory over here, reasoning capability, working memory. There's that working memory thing again. All these capabilities, you're seeing these patterns go back and forth. So agentic AI, the agents coming out of that are very similar, and they're moving very much towards historic cognitive architectures, which make them very powerful. Now, if you look at the roadmap of agents too, the stuff that they're going to stick in those over time, all these other things down here, knowledge graphs, vector stores, all these other capabilities that give them enhanced capabilities. Knowledge graphs are already being in there as well. Vector stores have already been there. The roadmap is very, very strong. So you're seeing that. On top of that, and this is going to be important for our conversations as well, see a very large technology stack out there, lots of money coming in, which means it's here to stay. And then these new roles that have never existed before. Agent engineer, optimization engineer, architect, multimodal engineer, all these other things never appeared before. Now, because this new tech, the world's changing. The nature of work is changing. Work to handle this is changing. So all good stuff to talk about. Now, it is different than machine learning. We've kind of dubbed on that. I don't want to spend too much time on here because I'm conscious of time. But machine learning is not the same tech as cognitive technology. Very, very different thing, but they are compatible. They're very complementary is really what I want to say. You'll see that again with typical large language models and agents and how they kind of stack up against each other. Not the same thing. Like they're born out of the foundation models and all of that, but they're really not the same thing at all. Completely different tech. So they keep that in mind too. Now, this brings us to our conversation. This brings us to what we really want to talk about. How does the nature of work change when agents emerge on the event horizon? And so if you take a look at the pattern of artificial intelligence evolution in organizations, you can set your watch by it, right? Orgs start out doing proof of concepts. They get a little bit of confidence. They start moving into a center of excellence, one size fits all. All the groups in the organization go to that. Then they blow that up and go to distributed. All of these are well understood. But then a miracle happens down here, and we move to an AI-centric organization. This is where I want to have this conversation centering. Like, how do we move? Like, this is understood, and it happens all the time. You can set your watch by it. This has not happened yet right here. And we don't know exactly how that happens, but the emergence of agents can really kind of put that out there as an enabling technology. So you've got, and you can see it in the literature, right? Well understood, not well understood, well understood, not well understood. It's all the way out. But think of this. So you've got an organization that has AI pockets. It's distributed, right? This is distributed to AI-centric. These are the attributes of an organization. We're going to talk about future-ready orgs. I think it's very important when you consider how orgs change in the VUCAD world. But how do we move from these siloed aspects where all these different organizational aspects within a large organization, maybe doing significant work but happening in silos, to where you've got this advanced technology backbone orchestrating all of those things. This was inconceivable until agents hit. Now we're beginning to get vision into how that might happen. This is where I'd like to have some of our conversations go to today. So we're also going to talk about, well, what jobs are going to be around and what jobs are not going to be around. And this crazy little graph can talk about that. There's jobs that AI really doesn't have much to do with, where we call low exposure over here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, it's higher exposure. AI can have a lot to do with these jobs. The ones up here are where AI can complement or augment. The ones down here are where AI could replace. So there's going to be some jobs that can be replaced, complemented, and we don't even care. So AI is never going to replace a dancer for that matter. All right, so this is going to be a part of a conversation as well. And then let's, here's sort of some seed ideas like, can we really predict the future of work? And should we, based on futurism? What about these jobs that are occurring that we don't even have titles for? We talk about the nature of work itself. We should talk about the managerial function or the shape of an organization or organization competitiveness, skills and training, corporate culture matters, and all these other things, human interaction, division of labor, things like that. All right, so with that, now we can start our discussion. And I think I've stayed under 20 minutes, which is really what I wanted to do. So I'm going to stop sharing now and hand the floor over to our illustrious host and say thank you for letting me kick this thing off. And let's talk about stuff.
Great. Thank you, Matthew, so much. It was really, really interesting. Yeah, so first question is, how is the technology prediction space varying? Can we really predict the future of work and jobs? What about the accelerating rates of change, creating jobs that we don't even have names for just yet?
So that's fun. It's a great thing to start with when you begin to highlight all of the great flameouts that have been made by these big technology leaders, like who was it? Ken Olson, founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, said there's no reason for any individual to ever have a computer in his home. Imagine that. And that was done in 1977. You've got the telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered a means of communication. President of Western Union, 1876. There's no chance your iPhone will get any significant market share. No chance. Steve Ballmer, Microsoft, 2007. So predictions, as you can see, don't work very well. So, and my crystal ball's been broken since I've been married. So, the crystal balls don't work either. Now, on the flip side, these are individuals, right? And there's other aspects of this when it comes to work. There's some good articles saying we can't predict how work is going to change. The media and experts and pundits always get beat up because of the crisisization of everything and the fact that sensationalism dominates the media and bad news, dystopian future gets everybody's attention. So there's psychology here that people like to make to sell things. But is it really true? Not often. I mean, how many times have we heard that the world's going to end? World's still here. So our ability to predict the future is not all that good, which is why I brought up foresight and futurism. They're not predicting the future. They're going on fact-finding missions, and they're coming back, and they're informing the now, and then they're inventing the future. So when Elon Musk goes, I'm going to Mars, he knows in 10 years, everything's fluid. In 5 years, he can build the base technology. In the next 5 years, he can actually get to Mars. This is the thought process. And you'd be surprised, like the big houses, consulting houses like BTG and Accenture and Deloitte and all those guys, they all have foresight in groups. They don't tell you that. And then the big companies like Boston Scientific and Best Buy and General Mills and Target, all of which are Midwestern, they buy those things. So I think that perspective is interesting to have. Like, we're not very good predictors, but we're really good inventors. Like, we can invent the future intentionally. You're going to see a lot more of that happening. And in the last 3 years, you can see that particular aspect occurring from everything from the economy to technology to social movements to geopolitical movements, things like that. Follow the World Economic Forum. I mean, those guys, they know that you can invent the future. You don't have to predict it.
If we go back to the chart you presented with the jobs eliminated versus the ones that will not be impacted significantly or not at all. So how do you really understand, like nowadays, looking at the jobs that we're familiar with, what's going to be impacted, what not? Do you feel that more new jobs will be created, or are we risking here a significant loss of jobs and
So
unemployment, maybe?
yeah, so I look at history there. Like, you take a look at what happened when Western Union said something, or when before the calculators came about, the people who did calculations for organizations did them by hand with pens and paper. Legions of people writing down calculations and sort of moving them up the top. And then digital calculators came, and people were like, you're all going to be out of a job. They weren't. They changed and they moved into programmers and invented the digital revolution. So human beings are very resilient that way. Having said that, if you have teams of people, not just a single person, that's a single point of failure, like Steve Ballmer or whatnot, or Steve Jobs, take your pick. Teams will do research pretty well, and they'll create frameworks in which to view things. So that particular slide that I showed had different quadrants to it. One quadrant had a function of, well, is AI potentially going to impact your future or not? Like a dancer. AI is never going to change a dancer's life. But a lawyer, it very well could. And then you have, does it matter? So you have different frameworks of which to view which jobs could be affected. Generally, the repetitive jobs that people don't like doing anyway could be affected. However, that's only our snapshot of where we are today. The world is moving very quickly. And so that scenario could change very quickly too. And the rates of change are happening very quickly. So that's the thing. One thing that I really want to get across is you must have sort of a paranoid perspective that things are happening much faster than you sense they are. Because every time I go out to the wild to track a whole bunch of stuff that I've been tracking for a couple of years in this space, they're all moving faster and faster and faster. So change is happening quicker, and a lot of that could change how we, our lens in which we view those things.
Could you please describe how it actually works, like the agentic AI? How does it actually impact the day-to-day, whether it's for the regular worker, whether it's for the manager? What does it actually mean to have an agentic AI versus just using GPT?
Okay, so think of GPT. Well, first of all, foundational models, you can consider the sum total of human knowledge embedded in a model. And there's all kinds of those. But foundational models can bring forth large language models, so you can communicate it through English language. It can bring forth a lot of other things, video, imagery, all kinds of stuff. So foundation models matter. In that, they're beginning to inject reasoning type models in there like you would see in a video game, where you've got cognitive capabilities being imbued into that thing. Now, what's interesting from that is like if you go play Call of Duty Halo, once you shoot a bad guy, another one appears. So there's this monster factory out there that's stamping out bad guys depending on what scenario, what room you go into, and who you shoot in the head and who's trying to shoot you in the head. So you have the ability to create agents with cognitive capabilities imbued upon delivery. It's kind of like humans, but they're synthetic. Actually, not like humans, but you get the idea. And then you can have multi-agent systems. Each one of those agents could have the ability to do something, whether that something's a managerial function or whether something is actually doing something. So to put it in context, imagine you wanted to write a blog post on artificial intelligence and you wanted to have a multi-agent system to do that. You give one agent the responsibility of going out, scouring the landscape for all the stuff you can find in artificial intelligence. Another one hands it over to an editor that sort of ranks everything and puts it into the right prose and puts it together for you in the right way and includes stuff you'd want and doesn't include stuff you don't want. Then it heads it over to another editor to really kind of fine tune it, then heads it over to a publisher. All these are agents. Humans are not involved. And we've done this. I've done this. Use Crew AI to do it and then post that to a blog site. No humans involved. So those agents are actually doing work. And where that matters for us in the corporate world is that much of the work we do is research oriented, synthesizing, things like that. Those agents can do that for you. Now, if you expect it to write your PhD thesis, that's another story. And if you expect it to write your legal brief, that's a different story too. They do have their limitations.
But I feel that it's still not very clear, like the difference between me now using ChatGPT with one of its reasoning models, for example, and asking it to write the blog post, and then it's just the way I see it, it's just ChatGPT doing the whole thing versus what you just described.
Yeah, so the reason that you see that is because your interface is the language that the large language model permits. And this is the difference between why um, generative AI really changed the world. And all the rest of the really cool but and extraordinarily powerful AI that's been around for a long time is that your the interface allows the common man on the street to use it. Whereas the other technologies, you had to have elite academics or elite engineers because the interfaces are so difficult, it was hard to deal with. So the interface that you see is very simple. Under the hood, it's really powerful. So I was just on a couple of calls where evaluating technologies from vendors, and everything was done with a language interface. But under the hood, when they showed us the architecture, it's all kinds of agents running around. There's a knowledge graph running around. There's reasoning and thinking models being tapped left, right, and center. Imagine having a whole bunch of models, one that knows about elementary particle physics, ones that knows about poetry, one that knows about law, ones that knows about logics and all, and you put them all together. Now you have a collective intelligence model, right? That knows a lot about a lot because you're squishing together a whole bunch of models, and you can have language models that can funnel information to any one of those. Now you have collective intelligence, and that's something that's out there too. So hopefully it's not what you can see, but it's what's under the hood.
How do you see this technology impacting managers? How do you manage agentic AI? How do you manage this new type of work culture where agentic AI is very heavily integrated?
Great question. It's being done now. So one of the groups that I've talked to, C.H. Robinson, is a international shipper. They do logistics and supply chain. They're using thousands of agents in their space, and they're facing these things. They're one of the first that are really facing these things in modern day. So first of all, the nature of work changes because now you have humans doing work, and you have synthetic creatures doing work. We'll have better names for them than creatures in the future. Um, and then you have to work together. So the managerial function has been, since inception, humans managing other humans, psychology and status within the organization, all of that kind of stuff. But what if you have a whole bunch of synthetic creatures that you also have to manage? How does that change the managerial function? Also changes the shape of the organization. Organizations are created for humans to manage other humans. But if now there's synthetic creatures, that changes too. So a couple of things that we found from what little we know, and this, by the way, is 2000, end of 2024, 25, and forward. So like this whole agent space, even though other agents have been around for a while, the stuff you're experiencing is very, very new. So how to manage it's quite a Spartan space. But you move from sort of the supervision space where you're supervising humans to orchestrating these legions of agents that don't care if you're nice to them or not. So orchestration becomes a thing. You're looking over that. Workforce composition changes too, because now you've got humans and non-humans working together, which is kind of an interesting thing when you think about it. And we should eventually talk about, oh, how good are these agents? Upskilling the managers to manage, who know how to manage humans, but don't know how to manage agents, and certainly don't know how to manage both together. So, and there are a whole bunch of other things like multi-agent control. Like if you've got multi-agent systems working where you've got agents managing other agents and humans managing manager agents, how does that change things too? All of these things are kind of up in the air. I mean, this is only, let's be generous and say it's 2024 onward. They only have had a year plus to work with this stuff. So it's a very new thing, and it's happening very fast.
Yeah, so you just mentioned my next question. So what are actually the skills of these agentic AIs, and also what are the limitations? Where would you say that we as humans, still win over these creatures that, from what you explained, sound super capable, super smart. Yeah, I'm curious to hear that.
So this is where the conversation radically changes, right? Because people are like, oh, the robot's got to be way smarter than me. No, it's not. Not at all. So now a couple things to remember, right? All of AI tech is subject to accelerating rates of change. compounding innovation cycles that are being squished together. And that means evolution. So the current state of the art right now is likely to change. In fact, you can bank on it. The only thing we don't know is how quickly that change is going to happen. So if I tell you that the state of the art is here, in some period of time, that is going to evolve and the state of the art is going to be very different. The only question is how long it's going to take to do that. So that's the backdrop against which I want to have this particular discussion. So, agents can compute some real world software tasks, comparable to what humans can do, you know, very quickly and a fraction of the cost. Okay, fine. However, they fall very short of the promise of being a skilled virtual worker. And I say this because we're out there, even though it's a new technology, you know, we have the federal side of the house that's working on things. We've got the private industry, which is actually working quite a bit on this side too. They're running experiments on the cognitive capabilities with good cognitive tests. And they're getting some fairly straight results, right? That agents in complex cognitive tasks that are complicated, that are dynamic, that involve reasoning, multi-step processes over, you know, those things that are over 4 hours long for humans, agents do terrible. They just can't handle that. So, and I think this is important to note that even the best agents find challenges when taking on novel, open-ended, longer time horizon tasks. So what that means for us at the current state of the art, now that does not tell us what's going to happen as these things move forward and mature. And you can bet when there's tons of money out there pointing to implementing certain theories that they're beginning to back, like how agents need to think and reason and behave and learn autonomously, that won't mature at an accelerating rate. So I'm telling you what's here, but what's going to be in the future, my crystal ball's been broken for a long time. So what we're finding is that agents can do tasks we don't want them to do, fairly simple tasks at this point in time. But when you get into, you know, academics and theorists, they want to move towards the extremes. That's what philosophers do. They put philosophy hat on. The very first thing they do is they sort of look at and interrogate the extremes of whatever topic they're looking at to be able to get boundaries on that, which is the thing that philosophers ought to do. And so when they start moving into these heavy, complex, dynamic tasks over long time horizons, agents don't do well. No. Once the calculator came about, people thought that was novel for about 15 minutes and thought, oh, well, let's get on to the next big thing. So you'll see these agents begin to take on kinds of work we don't want to do because it can. You'll also see them imbued in existing infrastructure investments like ServiceNow and a lot of these like UiPath and Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office. You'll see them imbued in many of these existing infrastructures to start helping people become more productive. But are they going to sit around and is that going to do differential diagnosis on someone who's got large list of comorbidities in the hospital room? I don't think so.
Do you feel that this technology will impact more heavily white-collar jobs or blue-collar jobs?
Ooh. So to the extent that blue-collar physical jobs are repetitive and extraordinarily boring, and nobody wants to do those, like stacking things in a warehouse. Nobody wants to do, you know, go to Harvard, Yale, and go, I want to be a warehouse stacker when I get old. That's not what they want to do. Those jobs are going to be subject to that. So robotics in that space. You'll also see very dangerous jobs being good candidates for unique types of automation like this with cognitive capabilities, things where humans can lose their life, like underwater, pick your favorite underwater dangerous profession. White collar jobs will likely be the same thing, those repetitive jobs that people don't want to do anyway, that can fit well within the frame of work that agents can do. You'll see those under fire. Those, from a policy perspective, are when lawmakers and things like that can go in and go, those are the people we want to protect. If AI is going to take their jobs, then we should upskill those people and get them to do something that's more meaningful and more self-actualizing. So you'll see a lot of that going on. On the flip side, you'll see some jobs where AI augments them. So, and AI makes you better. So there's this force multiplying effect. You see that with soldiers a lot, right? You take a soldier, put a bunch of technology on them. Now you can do the work of 5, 6, 7, or 8, or 9, or 10 soldiers. And so you'll say that augmentation side of the house, particularly in the healthcare side, is really where you'll see some traction there. But it won't be taking those people's jobs. It'll take that doctor and make them way more effective.
You received quite a few questions from the crowd, which is great. So one of them being, what jobs would you encourage children to pursue with Gen AI agents on the rise? Perhaps we can't tell the future about what jobs will be created, but what jobs do you think are considered safe beyond healthcare?
So excellent question. So first thing, for your children, don't let them cheat, right? Because AI can hallucinate and give you wrong things. Don't let it take dating advice from a synthetic creature. It's probably not a good idea, right? I wouldn't take dating advice from most humans, mind you. So don't let them do that, but have them learn skills like creativity, judgment, lots of interpersonal skills, strategy skills, public speaking, be able to debate, be able to think on their feet, be able to take criticism, those kinds of things that take emotional hits. Those things, as we get more and more technology out there, and it gets ubiquitous, the first wave of technology is going to be implemented really badly. The other waves will get better. But as technology becomes more ubiquitous, and you can see this with people walking on their phone, personal, authentic human interaction becomes highly valued. So humanness, as technology spreads, will become incredibly valuable because it won't be anywhere. Authentic interactions, things like social skills and people skills, being able to hold a conversation at the dinner table with diplomats. These are things that AI can never do, that only unique humans, it's unique to a human to do that, at least currently. So those are things. Now, in terms of jobs, remember, there's this, if you think of time like this, and on the left-hand side, these are jobs that are being sunset, like COBOL programmers, although that COBOL program is making a comeback. We're sunsetting certain jobs, but other jobs are opening up that we don't have names for yet. So we follow tech and we see where that's going to be. That's where I would look to, and I've got 3 boys in college, but if you've got young kids, I would have them focus on that cutting edge to see where the world is sitting, begin putting names to those jobs, watch what's happening in those unique industries, because you want to be in the forefront of that river as it begins to continually move, and go from there. So that's one strategy. The second strategy is to realize there are certain things that are timeless. There are certain, the ability to be confident, the ability to be a master strategist, to have judgment, to read and debate and plan and be strategic. All of these things are timeless skills. Those are important because they can be applied anywhere.
So it actually leads to another question that we received from the crowd. And so someone is asking, what about change in democracy, in judges and representative and executives that could come with agentic AI? What's your take on that?
Ooh, so being in the federal space that I am, I have to preface this with these are only my opinions. I am in no way representing any federal, state, or local agency. Um, and so that's important to consider. So I think at least in the United States is really important from a civics point of view to realize that we are not a democracy, never have been. We're a constitutional republic. That changes everything because democracy is by its nature is mob rule. So, and we're definitely not that. So, and most democracies really aren't democracies. They're some form of constitutional republics. Having said that, the agents can change that space. It has. Look at the emergence of social media, the influence that has. The ability to, like, if you take a look at a staffer in Congress, that big building behind me that I run around to get exercise, they have legions of staffers. You know what those staffers do? They don't run around getting coffee for the Congress people. They run around doing research and curating and synthesizing information correctly to give them the right perspective so that when they interact with each other, those Congress people and senators interact with each other, they can do so intelligently. They can also do battle intelligently too. So you'll see an arms race in that space where, and it's particularly suited to this kind of stuff because research is fundamental to agentic technology. And speed is a key thing in the VUCAD world. So getting information faster, that's better, that makes you more capable in the world of influence, which is really all what politics is. It's a major advantage. So I think you'll see this kind of tech being used a lot in that space.
Someone mentions an article by Nature from last year showed that when AI was trained on AI generated content, it could lead to what's currently called model collapse. How is this being dealt with considering the rise of AI generated content online, which is often used to train such models?
Sure. So really good question. AI should never be used. AI generated content should very rarely, if ever, be used to train AI models because you can't tell if it's true or not. And that's a real problem. Excuse me. You'll also see this in one of the executive orders that just came out last week, as a matter of fact. So you have the sort of the America's AI strategic plan, and then you had like 3 or 4 executive orders come out from that. One of those is getting rid of that kind of that kind of capabilities within the models that the federal government uses. Now, here's the thing that they're after. They're saying, look, we in the models that AI gets trained with, you must have objective truth. You cannot have relative truth. That's a big deal. Like 1 + 1 must equal 2. 1 + 1 can't equal 3. And that's a metaphor. I'm throwing that out, but we get mileage from that. You get the idea. So objective truth is of primary when it comes to training these models. Otherwise, you can have a model that can't tell you the truth. And if you don't know that, that could be a real problem. So objective truth, even for humans, like we should strive to in the era of massive social media reach and gaslighting as a form of persuasion, the quest for objective truth, even if you don't like it, is paramount because if you're going to be roaming around a particular city, you need a map that's correct. If that map, for some reason, whether it's a mental map or anything like that, is incorrect, you're going to run into abrasion, if not worse. And so that's incredibly important. Important enough to have an entire executive order of that nature spit out last week.
What would you say is important for organizations using agentic AI to implement in order to be competitive?
Good point. So we do have some examples of that on the competitive side of the house. One of those is C.H. Robinson. Look those guys up. I'll even see if I can find the link for that and throw it in the chat. And I do. I have it right here. They're an interesting aspect because they have. I'll throw that in there. They're doing this at scale, and they're a big multinational organization. So competitiveness changes. Remember that in the VUCAD world, speed matters. Speed to market, speed to value, speed to innovation matters. And the ability to take on the hardest problems that your industry's forgotten because they're like, we can't deal with it. Our tech's not good enough. Now the tech's there. Now go handle those problems. So a couple things happen. Speed and scale are very important. And doing that safely and under control is important. So when we talk about AI governance, we talk about the organizational performance has to increase. You have to have sustained innovation. You have to have enhanced competitiveness, but you need to do that at speed and scale, but under control. And that's the key thing. So that's one thing. Speed and scale are faster when it comes to competition. Barriers to entry matter too. And this is where time comes in, right? So you have an organization like C.H. Robinson, they're like, we're going to go all in on agents and we're going to develop our agent capability. And they are. There's some smart folks over there. Because they're there, that entry barrier that barrier to entry is now being risen. So many of their competitors, they're having a hard time catching up. So speed matters here too. Also, interestingly enough, in the nature of competition, the human capacity matters even more. Like the human connection, even though there's technology everywhere, you can tell when there's a real human there who really wants to listen to you and understand you, that becomes amplified and magnified. So that's kind of important too, but not intuitive. Yeah, hopefully that helps on that front.
Yes, definitely. You also mentioned that the upscaling cycles will be much more frequent, and some organizations will be even like just after onboarding, basically the new workers. So, do you think that it will be the company's job, the company's responsibility, to upscale its workers, or is it going to be the personal responsibility of each potential worker?
That is the question of the day. So let's be very, very clear about this. To everyone out there who's listening, no one's coming to save you. The world's going to change and no one's going to come and save you. It's completely, utterly your responsibility. Your government's not going to save you. Your job's not going to save you. Your academia is not going to save you. The only thing that's going to save you is you. And so that's when you need to change your lifestyle to, instead of watching TV at night and watching reruns of your favorite sitcom, make sure continuous learning is part of your evening routine. And that's an important thing because people will all of a sudden put the onus for what they should do for the next job on their employer, and they're never gonna accept that. So fundamentally, it's our job to save ourselves when it comes to this, to reskill, to figure out where the world's going, make sure you can hone in on that, do your own work, position yourself with your little surfboard. When that wave's coming, jump on it and ride as long as you can, as metaphors go.
Does this make academia irrelevant?
So academia has to change. Academia post World War II, at least at the primary school level, was stamping out people who could take orders, obey, and do what they need to do. It's gotten softer since then, and the university system is under fire too, for much the same reasons. And so there are competitions coming out in terms of online courses. Trade schools are coming back into vogue. When manufacturing comes, trades are going to be a much bigger deal. So the university knows that they have to change, the academia knows they have to change, and the federal government knows that academia has to change. And you can see that because the Department of Education was disbanded with this latest, with the change of administrations. They're gone, or mostly gone. So academia is under fire right now. That's a hard one to figure out. I'm not sure what they're going to do. They know that something called not agentic, but adaptive technology in education is coming about. So imagine that you didn't have a one size fits all kind of a routine where you could have an AI that could understand where your strengths and weaknesses are based on any subject, whether it's elementary particle physics or calculus 3. It could test your capabilities and know where you rank relative to everything it knows, and then teach you those things you need to know on your own schedule to move you up that curve of knowledge. So that fundamentally changes the execution of education. Now, when we get down to fundamental brass tacks, this is an important consideration. The education and your responsibility to become educated is completely yours. Can't blame it on the educational institution. That's just an option. Can't blame it on the primary educational institution, even though it's not an option. The parents and individuals need to know that in this world, your responsibility to become educated with all this crazy tech is uniquely yours. And of what we've been tracking in the wild of how education could change, it all comes back to the individual that says, hey, you're responsible for your education. Do not abdicate that responsibility to a higher educational institution and then expect them to make you ready for the job market. They won't. The educational institution will be happy to take your money, but they won't give you a guarantee that you'll find a job or that you'll keep your job. And so the faster we realize that no one's coming to save you, that's that same mantra again, right? No one's coming to educate you, like it's entirely your fault or your responsibility. Then we can kind of enable ourselves to do better in an environment like this.
Is there any current legislation about agentic AI? I believe a lot of things will need to be discussed, uh, you know, to make sure that no one, abuses it, that, you know.
Sure. So interesting you say that. I'm giving a talk on Wednesday all about the policy landscape for AI for Minnesota healthcare. They said, hey, we need you to do this since you're sitting in the nation's capital. Can you fill us in? So I've got oodles of information on that. The at least in the United States, well, if you take a look at US and Europe as a starting, we'll start with bigger context and kind of move smaller. Europe is really into legislation and policies and that kind of governance. They're not into innovation. So Europe is in trouble on that side of the house, right? And they know it. Like we meet senators and we meet diplomats and attachés from various European countries here in DC, and they're all like, "Yeah, we like to regulate, but we don't really innovate." That's a problem. In the state side, we're going to innovate first. You've seen in the BBB, one big beautiful bill, they removed the 10-year imposition where states could not create their own laws because they felt that Congress felt like the states shouldn't be handcuffed. And states' rights took precedence over federal rights on that front, where states should be able to make their own laws and things like that to govern what they do, because every state's very different. Minnesota is very different than Texas. So you'll see a hands-off approach to that. You'll see a pro-innovation approach. You'll see a pro approach to innovation, to competitiveness, to adoption of AI as quickly as you can under control, and a trajectory towards organizational performance that's got to enhance. You got to get better. So see a lot of those kinds of things. You'll see a lot of talk about deep fakes. That was one of the other executive orders that came out. It's like we need to have technology to help us not just combat bad actors, but deep fakes, because that has issues with authentication. It has issues with the legal profession. It has issues with governmental concerns and things like that. Like if you had Obama saying blah, 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 and he never said that, but it really looks like him, now you have a problem. And if you really want to go deep, deep, deep into deep fakes without technology, go out there and research face mask technology, because that'll blow your mind. When people come in, they did that with the sitting president, came in, looked like person X. They talked like person X. 15 minutes later, the person went like this, and it was person Y. And the president was like, holy cow, I couldn't believe this happened. So if you want to see how the non-technology deepfakes, look at face mask technology. So those kinds of things are out there. We're fast moving into the space. And the thing that should be startling for you is how fast we're moving in there and the fact that you didn't know it. So those are two things, speed and the fact that it's hidden. And you can bet that those two things are always at play. So there should always be a little bit of paranoia going, what don't I know? Because I know there's these guys are moving fast, and I know it's being hidden from me, and it's not just my own fault. Like it's being hidden from me until the time is right. What is it? How do I figure out the things I don't know? That'll keep you on the forefront of things.
Received another question from the crowd. Because the AI is being created by different countries and people coming from different nations, different cultures, is it possible to have national AIs bearing national characteristics of their creators?
You bet there is. Oh, that's an excellent question. And one of the problems we have in the United States is we autobiographically project Judeo-Christian values in the rest of the world. You go, you guys must all be like us because, well, we're Americans, right? And that's a problem. So the idea of fair and fairness is inherently a Judeo-Christian autobiographical projection coming from the US to everybody else. And we paint everybody else with that same brush. Well, if we do that, other people will too. And they all have different ideas of fair. Like what's fair for one person might be what's good for their country. That's kind of how we define fair too. So there's no question about that. And that's interesting because if you can have agents talking to other agents, And one agent goes, this is fair, and we mean this. And the other agent goes, this is fair, and we mean that, which happens with humans too, by the way, in intense, geopolitical negotiations. Fair gets redefined. So the idea of democracy when the U.S. was talking to the Russians in the late 60s, they were using the same word and it didn't mean the same thing. So there's no question that that can be imbued in agents and models. And when it does, this is why we had an executive order about that. When it does, now you have agents and models that can scale at speed. And you can take that issue, whatever that non-objective truth is, and you can multiply it. That's a problem. We don't have an answer for that.
So sadly, we just have 1 more minute. So if there are any concluding words or any more insights that you'd like to share that we didn't get to today, please go ahead.
None for me, except it's an honor to be here. I've always been watching Wikistrat as they've been growing and all the good work that you do. Hook up with me on LinkedIn. I'll be glad to connect with you on LinkedIn, and anytime I can help out. I have a very altruistic bent to me. I'm always glad to help folks out any way I can in this space, and I've been in this area for about 4 decades, so I've got a little more experience than most, and glad to help people from around the world.
Great, Matthew. Thank you so much. It was fascinating. Um, and thank you everyone who joined us today. And we will share the details of our next webinar soon. So thank you everyone again, and have a great day.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye now.